From BQE Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Atlanta's historic Martin Luther King District, it's Newsmakers Live, bringing you the issues, politics, and perspective of the Atlanta community. Now in its 10th season, here is tonight's moderator and your host, 8-time Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, Mr. Maynard Eaton.
First time this week she actually worked, man.
Yeah.
But Justin Tanner's a 37-year-old political dynamo. But we're breaking news tonight. He's also going to become, this week, the incoming executive director of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. I want to applause for that.
Thank you.
He's going to be running the Black Caucus here in Georgia. It's going to be, given his background, I'm sure there'll be a difference made. What do you think about that? Before we go on, what do you think your role will be in that regard, Justin?
Well, my role as the executive director will be to basically serve as a CEO for the organization. The Georgia Legislative Black Caucus is made up of about 61 members.
Biggest in the country, right?
Largest in the country. And so I will be working on a few things. Number one, making sure the processes and procedures, everything is working smoothly. So whether it's payroll, whether it's their internship process, they have partnerships with the AUC. And making sure that staff is straight. And also fundraising, I think, will be a big aspect of my job, making sure that we're bringing in money in the coffers so that to put the caucus on the right footing so they can focus on the priorities, the legislative priorities and the policy initiatives and then also the third thing is to raise the profile of the organization.
Yeah, that's what we were talking earlier. I think this, we know individual members of the caucus, as a group, as a whole, I don't think they have the clout and punch and profile that they may have had in the past or could have now.
Absolutely, and what I shared with the executive committee and also the president, Senator Lester Jackson of Savannah,
yes.
Was that I have a unique set of experiences both at the municipal level, the local level, lobbying at the state capitol, and also at the federal level, presidential appointee with two different cabinet administrations, make me uniquely positioned to be able to, both from a relationship standpoint and from knowledge standpoint, to kind of bring some of that.
Now, will fundraising be your number one thing?
Yeah,
because you've done that plenty of times.
Yeah. I think the majority of my work will be fundraising. I think I probably spend about 60 to 70, maybe even more % of my time doing that. They have 5 or 6 major initiatives, different events that they have. One of which is the Heritage Foundation dinner, which is on Wednesday evening. So I'll be announced formally there.
You formally announced your promotion, huh?
Absolutely. So
that should be a big night for your family and friends. In fact, some of your friends are here, are friends of mine.
Absolutely. I have friends in the audience that have known me probably since high school.
We've known each other since high school.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Dennis Gomez and his wife Henrietta. Thank you so much for being here.
Coming.
What does that mean to you with regard to different political generations? You look at the caucus, there are a number of young folks and middle-aged folks and people my age. I mean, how do you work with that mixture, that mix of political generations and ideas?
That's an interesting question, Maynard. I think it starts, obviously, as Mike mentioned, with the president. The president had to work with several different generations, both when he was a state senator in Illinois and also when he was a U.S. senator, in order to punch through and win both in 2008 and 2012. I think I've learned a lot from my former boss as well. I was a political aide in the mayor's office to Mayor Kasim Reed, and he served 11 years at the state legislature, 4 years in the House, 7 years in the Senate, generating relationships on both sides of the aisle.
That was a stepping stone, right?
Absolutely.
Those relationships, right?
Absolutely.
And it's now being talked about as a future mayor, future gubernatorial candidate.
Absolutely. And I think, so I've watched him. I've done a lot of what Michael has done. We've watched our predecessors and how they've operated. But we also know that we're in a unique position. Michael is 34, I'm 37. We're on the cusp of a millennial generation, right. So we deal with Facebook and Twitter and a lot of the tools that the younger generation uses. So I think we're both uniquely positioned to kind of bridge the gap and make sure that the younger generation is involved in the conversation and that we're highlighting the issues that they, particularly care about.
Michael talked about how Michael Sterling, who's a friend of yours and you worked together in the past, we mentioned how people said it's not your time yet. Wait your time, stand back, stand down a little bit. Have you run against those sort of obstacles and those sort of opinions?
Not as directly as Michael has. Michael and I are very close friends, and he shares some of those stories with me. Fortunately, I haven't been in a position to offer myself for public office, so I haven't encountered a lot of those questions yet. But I think even as it relates to the fundraising that I did for the president in 2011 and 2012, there were folks both in Georgia and nationally that were more established in that space, and I was the only raiser under 40 perhaps in the country that raised over $500,000 for the president. So I think when you approach it from that perspective, a lot of folks maybe feel threatened about who you are and who you work for, and what types of values and things you're bringing to the table. But at the end of the day, it's all about performance.
Are you being called upon now by friends running for office?
I pray on that every day.
Who asked you to raise money for them? That's your forte, right?
Yeah. And it it
how
comes
the heck
with
do you do it?
It comes with a certain responsibility, because one of the things you don't want to do is keep on dipping in the well and keeping asking the same people to support you. I think fundraising is a very personal space where people build up a trust and rapport with you as an individual, as opposed to the candidate or the person that you're supporting. Yes, I can say that for Kasim.
So I'd rather give to you than give
Absolutely.
you because of.
Absolutely. A lot of people who know, and Ava knows this, when I started my political career in 2008, I served as the mayor's director of new media. And one of the things we share in our background is that we're both from Howard University. The mayor is now currently on the board of Howard, and he's served on the board for 10 plus years. We're proud of our decisions. But I will share with you that when I first started supporting the mayor when he was a state senator, a lot of my friends who had no idea who he was, even though he did go to Howard, knew who I was and had been classmates of myself. And so they supported me because they knew that, number one, in November I wouldn't have a job if he didn't win. And number two, they knew my character and knew my personality. And the same thing happened when I supported the president as well.
Speaking of the mayor, have you been troubled at all by some of the things you hear, some of the headlines about misgivings or at City Hall?
What troubles me is, I saw the same thing happen to his predecessor, Mayor Shirley Franklin, who coincidentally spoke at my commencement. So in 2002, when I graduated, she was my commencement speaker. And then 10 years to the day, I was actually working for her predecessor in her office, which is a really interesting story. But the same thing happened to her last year in office. I think it kind of comes with the territory as an elected official. You have to kind of expect those types of I wouldn't necessarily say attacks, but those types of tactics to be used against you. But I think at the end of the day, the way I know him, I worked for him for 5 years. He had a high level of integrity. He's a very smart individual. He was a partner at Holland & Knight when he was 34 years old. He appointed a very competent city attorney in Kathy Hampton, who I know personally. And so, and every dealing that I've had with him has been high ethically and morally. And I think he knows how to conduct himself. So I'll let that kind of play out. But as a personal friend of his, and as somebody who is a mentee of his, and I think Mike would share the same thing. We're all pulling for him and hoping that nothing more nefarious comes out.
Do you see him as a gubernatorial candidate? Is that something that's on the horizon for?
I think the sky's the limit. The thing that he's told me personally is that he would love to go into the private sector and make a little money first.
He told me that too.
Which is the same thing my wife has told me as well. As I've considered public office, she would like me to kind of do the same type of thing. But I think eventually he would probably offer himself for office. And I think for somebody who got reelected at 80+% reelection in terms of the percentage of folks that supported him, I think he ran the city in a tremendous fashion.
You let something slip here. You said your wife said make some money before you run for office. So that means you are going to seek elective office.
I've thought about it, but again, number one, I've prayed on it and asked for guidance, and number two, if she's willing to support me, yes, I would consider. But at what level, I don't know. I think it's more important that a person is using their gifts to the best of their ability and sharpening their toolbox. And I think there's a lot that I need to learn before I actually offer myself for public office.
So that's why you're working for the Georgia Legislative Caucus to learn politics.
I think the interesting thing about that position for me has been I've now had an opportunity to work on a mayoral campaign citywide, and I made great relationships with people like Lisa Borders and Leader Abrams at the Capitol. And then I've worked both in the mayor's office in a communications capacity and also as a lobbyist. So I worked at the Capitol and met a lot of those folks. But then I served as a presidential appointee in 2 different White House agencies. I served at this SBA, where I was a senior advisor there, and then I served as associate director at Commerce. So I think all of those experiences help.
You had a big role at Commerce Department too, did you?
Absolutely. I was so Commerce. For those who aren't as familiar with the the department, it's got 12 different bureaus. So everything from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to the Census Bureau. Those are the types of agencies at the Commerce Department. My agency was a minority business development agency. I served for a lady who was a national director named Alejandra Castilla, who reported directly to Penny Pritzker, who was the head of the agency, who sat on the president's cabinet. So I saw it at a very high level. In a similar fashion at SBA, I worked for an associate administrator who reported to the head of SBA, who also sat on the president's cabinet. So I think I had a unique position to kind of see how policies at the federal level are implemented and trickle down to the states.
What do you think you like better, the national level, Congress, or now the state house or local Atlanta politics?
I think at the end of the day, the local jobs are probably the most fun. And because as the mayor has shared with both myself and Michael, you have an ability to make a more immediate impact. If you see a pothole that needs to be fixed, or if you see graffiti on the side of the road that needs to be cleaned, you can literally order folks to kind of clean those things up. You can also do things about crime based on your budget priorities and where you allocate your resources. So I think, from a direct governing standpoint, I think the mayor of a major city and a city council person and the ordinances that they vote on and the things that they're doing on a daily basis have more of a direct impact on people's lives. I think at the federal level, it's a lot of it is more rhetoric, a lot of it is more political posturing, and it's unfortunate in the very polarized climate that we have now that you don't see more of the actual work being done as opposed to the rhetoric on both sides. Well,
the rhetoric on both sides, as you well know, President Trump has sharply criticized your former boss, President Obama. And with regard to wiretapping and any number of things. Today he talked about how he's liked a lot better now because he's gone.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about where this president is taking us? What's happening in Washington?
And I've shared at another event, I think one of the most difficult things as a former presidential appointee who served the president now directly for 3 years, but indirectly, to be honest with you, the mayor was a surrogate for the president when he spoke on Meet the Press and things. So for at least 7 or 8 years, I've supported the president. And to see somebody with, the stroke of a pen be able to eliminate things that you've worked on for literally 3, 4, 5 years is really disturbing to me. For example, to give you a concrete example, the Minority Business Development Agency has been around for 46 years. Was started under President Nixon as a tool that minorities could use in the inner cities to kind of build and thrive. And it was started via an executive order. So theoretically, what the American population has learned in the 50-something days that the president has been in office is that theoretically the president could rescind that executive order or rewrite the executive order and eliminate my agency. And that's what he has proposed to do.
Has he said he's going to do that?
Yes, there was a report, and the president has not released his fiscal 18 budget. But as you've seen, that he wants to redirect funding and put more funding into the military. Agencies like my former agency, which was viewed as an entitlement type of agency, they've talked about actually eliminated the agency. So, for those of you in the room, MBDA was a $32 million agency. We had 44 business centers throughout the country, and we focused on nothing but helping, providing technical assistance and consulting consulting advice to minority-owned businesses. So, with the stroke of a pen in the new fiscal budget, the president could eliminate that entire agency, which is what I've seen pieces from the Washington Post and otherwise that say he's proposing to do, but we'll see in the months moving forward. So it's a very serious thing.
And today, a reorganization of the executive branch, which could portend any number of cutbacks.
The president has a lot of authority. If you really think about it, whether it's the local executive, the mayor, the governor, They have control over, so for the president, for example, the State Department, the Treasury Department, the Energy Department, the Education Department, Transportation Department, Small Business Administration, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. I mean, there are any number of agencies, probably 20 to 30 federal government agencies that the president not only appoints the secretary or the administrator, but the deputy secretaries, the associate secretaries, the senior advisors, the chiefs of staff of all those federal government agencies are controlled by the president, and they're all presidential appointees. And even as we've seen recently with the DOJ and the attorney generals that were recently fired. So
that's why people say you serve at the
pleasure of the president. Absolutely,
because he can wipe you out in a moment's notice, like he did the U.S. attorney.
Yeah, and so to give you a little insight into the process, what happened with my former boss's boss, the president of the United States, is. The White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, sent a memo out to all the presidential appointees in November that said the president would like all of our resignation letters by December 6th of last year. So you basically formally resign. Now it's effective on January 20th at 12 o'clock after the formal transition of power takes place. But theoretically, we're all looking for jobs November, December, January, and into February. Yeah,
that's an awkward time, I imagine.
Yeah. Now the silver lining to that was what this president did is he extended an invitation to all of the appointees to come to Joint Base Andrews. So while the current president was being sworn in, I was actually at Joint Base Andrews waiting on the president. So Valerie Jarrett and a lot of the senior White House staffers came in, and then the president and first lady addressed us. Which I live streamed on Facebook, so I'd love to share if anyone wants to view it. But we waited for our president to leave. The current president is the president of everybody. This is somebody who we personally support.
Finally, one of your other new ventures, you're doing something called with the Collective PAC.
Oh yeah.
Again, that sounds like raising money again.
Yeah. So since my bread and butter, as Ava mentioned, is fundraising, I have a list that I use selectively to support candidates. So I have two friends of mine. One was a classmate of mine at Howard. Her name is Stephanie Brown James. She graduated like myself in 2002, worked for the NAACP, and then she also became in 2011, 2012, the National Director of African American Outreach for the President. She and her husband, Quentin James, who started a PAC, a national PAC in support of Hillary Clinton, started this organization, and it's all about, it's a PAC, it's a national PAC, that's focused on electing black elected officials, African American elected officials at the state, local, and federal levels. So that's what we're about. The contribution limits are $5,000 for an individual. But what we're doing is we're selectively choosing races where there are no African American incumbents and choosing to support African American candidates in those races. And the reason why this is important is because there was a study done in 2014, and I can get you the study and I can send you the information, that said that 31% of the population was white males, but they made up something like 65% of elected positions. Similarly, I think there was a statistic about how many Caucasian people in general there were in the United States versus how many were of color and who were actually elected officials. And so those numbers were very skewed in favor of the majority populations. And so what we've seen from Ferguson to things that were happening in Baltimore, there needs to be a lot more attention played as it relates to the local level, states attorneys generals, mayors, city council members, and make them more reflective of the communities where they are. So that's what we've decided to focus on. The organization is very credible.
Is it based here?
It's based in DC. The website is collectivepac.org. And it's really interesting. They have this initiative right now. If you go to the website, there's a splash page up called Organize 45. Organize 45 is based on Congressman Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president back 45 years ago, and also the National Political, I think, Black Political Committee that had their event. But on the 45th anniversary of that, coupled with the 45th president, who has taken policy positions that have been very difficult for us as a community, we want to use that to drive people to the polls, to drive people to support us financially. And so what we're doing is we're hosting a series of events around the country. I hosted an event last week in Atlanta at the Gathering Spot, There's going to be an event in a couple of weeks. One of our endorsed candidates is Justin Fairfax, who's, I think, running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Don't quote me on that. But Justin Fairfax is an endorsed candidate. There was also a female African-American candidate who lost in St. Louis by about 888 votes. We had endorsed her. But that's what we're about. There's an event coming up in Chicago. There's another event in Cleveland, and I can get you the dates and the material.
Well, let us know. Keep us informed, please.
Absolutely.
Because what I've learned from you, and you've known this before, but you really, it resonates with you what you do. The candidates might be sexy and fine, those ones we see on TV, but they're nothing but the guys who raise the money and do the hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And and Michael mentioned it, alluded to it in his previous interview. There's a group of people behind the mayor. There's a group of people behind an elected official that support that person. Unwavering commitment. They're there. If you remember, here's an example. When we went through the snowstorm back in, I think, 2010, there were two different snowstorms. Right. But there, Sanji Jacobs-Dane was the previous communications director for the mayor. She was with him as he did those morning shows when nobody in the city could literally move. So there's a team of folks that are loyal to the person who's in office, that support that person. Sometimes it helps to kind of lift the veil and see who's actually doing a lot of work.
We're sure glad we lifted the veil to
Thank
see
you.
Man,
Thank
you're
you.
quite a
Thank
young
you.
man.
Yeah, thank you. And I met Maynard in 2009 on the campaign, and I was running around with Kasim with a camera. So I've kept in touch with him, and it's just an honor to be back. He's been doing this thing for quite a while now. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Jim, welcome. Our producer.
Ava's coming. Ava's close.
Ava's coming. Okay. All right.
Is he disappointed?
Excuse me. No.
Okay.
You look a lot better than Jim.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys. I'm so glad you made this show. Thank you so much. It was a great interview. Y'all, please give me But I just want to also point out that despite what you just brought up about the executive director of...
the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus.
Okay, you heard that here first, just like you hear everything here first. So thank you, Justin, for coming. Thank you, Mr. Michael Sterling, for being here. Another round of great interviews. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Newsmakers.
Young people make.